Welcome back to Hopeful Stories. Well, I didn't know you already here, but okay, you know our motto. When God is on your side, just know that everything is going to be alright.
Life is full of trials, a journey full of experience. With God on your side, all will be alright.
Okay, so today I'm here with a somewhat controversial topic, guys. The streets of Facebook, they're burning hot. It's hot like a heater, if I could say. So there's one socialite who went on to post, and they were talking about marriages. And the question that she put on was, why do nowadays marriages seem to not last as much as the olden day marriages? You know, the kind of marriages that we're talking about, the marriages that our grandfathers and our grandmothers had. It seems like people had so many reasons, and people came out with so many causes, so many solutions, and there were so many lectures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just read a bit of comments and a bit of reasoning that came from the people that were actually on the platform. So this particular lady said that our grandmother and fathers stayed even when the husband or wife had 7 children outside the marriages. Nowadays, women and men don't tolerate that crap. This is a person that commented, and I'd like to just zero in because this is something that I see nowadays, where you get people starting to compare marriages of the olden day and marriages of today. We need to understand there's a very huge generational gap, and the main reason why marriages seem to not work these days, it's because the institute of marriage itself ceased to evolve. People who are actually in the marriages have not given themselves time to evolve. What am I saying? I know you're probably shocked, and you're like, Hope, what does that mean? Let me tell you, the generation that lived in the years back and the generation that lives now, we are totally worlds apart. Our grandmothers and our grandfathers, just like what this lady said, they tolerated things that they termed normal, which were very much abnormal. Abuse back in the day was normal, which today a lot of women and a lot of young ladies cannot stand for. I know a group of ladies that were part of a discussion, and one of the ladies stood up and said, I saw how my parents' marriages were, and believe me, there's a lot of things that I told myself that I do not want to copy or to replicate what I saw my mother and my father living in their marriage. It's because there were a lot of things that culture was approving. There were a lot of things that even religion was approving, which if you really look into it today, it does not have substantial foundations, or some of the things are actually against the laws of marriage, against the godly principles of marriage. Okay, I've spoken a lot. What am I saying? Let me break it down for you. Back in the day, in my culture, okay, I'm going to give you a background of my culture, Shona culture. Men were allowed to marry as many wives as they can, officially or unofficially. We have a larger group of women who knew that my husband is staying with another wife and has another family somewhere else. And culture would say, you don't question why your husband has another wife somewhere else, why your husband has a small house. You do not question that. You do not question your husband when he does not sleep at home. You do not question why he's angry. Whenever he does something wrong, you actually have to apologize. You have to make sure that your husband is the one that is happy in the marriage. You have to be the one who forgoes yourself because you are now living for your husband. That was the olden day marriages. And I mean, under those harsh conditions, you'd find that marriage was definitely working. So, what am I saying? you will find that those conditions were very harsh, but culture was accepting that. Okay, another olden day marriage lesson was you have to make sure that you are living your life for your husband. Well, they didn't spell it out like that, but it sounded like that's what they meant. What am I saying? You would find that any purpose that every woman had in those days was something that is not of any much of concern, or rather termed as important. You want to go out and start a business, you were labeled as a woman that is not the wife material. You want to go out and study, women were oppressed. So I saw that panning out in a lot of olden day marriages, which you find today people saying they approved of that. And because now the ladies that are getting married now, my generation, we are so much well informed. We know what is right and what is wrong. We have stood up for ourselves, and now we have the ability or the opportunity to question the bad intentions that a husband or a boyfriend to be would start showing. We also have the confidence to stand up for our own rights in the appropriate way. We also have the confidence of labeling out what is wrong and questioning and calling out the men. Now, not so many men are very much accepting of that. That's why you find that most men will be like, this woman is very disrespectful. No. I'm just calling you out for your actions which are very wrong, your actions which are very questionable. I'm not challenging you. I am not, standing in a position of wanting to disrespect you. I am just conversating. I am speaking out. I am voicing out. Now, you will find that we still have teachings that teach the young woman who's getting married today. Those teachings are very substantial, they're very binding, they are teachings that are modern, they are teachings that have seemingly evolved. But you will find that the husbands, on the other hand, are still stuck on that old mentality of the olden day marriage, where when you are being questioned, you will just interpret it as the wife is being disrespectful. When are the husbands going to take action? The responsibility of their own actions, where they're going to stand up and say, yes, my ego has just stepped and gone forward and it has not been appropriately placed. What am I saying? I feel like comparison of marriages, the olden day marriages and nowadays marriage, should be done on the basis of realities, on the basis of things that are actually happening today. It should be done on the basis of considering the evolving times, considering the characters, the new generation, the appropriate means of explaining what the institute of marriage entails. Okay, there's something that I thought of the other day. I was thinking to myself, back in the day, men, husbands, were labeled as providers. A provider is a role that has always in the years been attached to men. So you know very well, when you're a boy growing up, you are groomed, you are told, you are taught, you are cultured to be a provider. And you are even not groomed enough to take control or to take accountability of your own actions. Because why? All you know to do is to provide. But fast forward that to the 20th century, fast forward that to today. How many husbands out there are actually able to fulfill the provider role? Not so many. It's just not so many. So does it mean that outside the provider role, if you do not provide for your family, you cease to be a husband? Does it mean that you cease to be a man? Does it mean that your manhood now is questioned? Does it mean that you don't have any other important roles outside of being a provider? So I personally feel like men need to engage into these conversations. Husbands need to engage into these conversations and talk about how the provider role has evolved in the Institute of Marriage. Because this is one thing that is contributing to why marriages nowadays do not last. What am I saying? We have husbands that have lost jobs due to COVID-19, due to other certain reasons. And because this man has all his life, he has been groomed to be a provider. When that provider role is taken out of the equation, he malfunctions because that's all he knows. He malfunctions, he starts being abusive, he starts being oppressive, he starts being, a perpetrator of emotional abuse without even realizing what they're doing. So what am I saying? It's time we think outside the box. Of course, we can compare olden day marriages and nowadays marriages, but also in our comparison, let's think outside the box and look at the actual reasons why marriages are seemingly not working now. Is it because of the evolving times? Is it because there isn't much of the teaching when it comes to the husbands who are getting married? Or is it just the fact that olden day marriages went through so much trauma, went through so much abuse, all in the name of, I'm here to stay for my kids? If I'm to ask you a question, the modeling marriage that you are putting onto the table, is it something that was aligned to God's original plan of marriage? Because as much as I know, the olden people were being told, once you get married, you don't question your husband's whereabouts. You don't ask him if he comes back home late. You don't have to ask where he was. But doesn't that breed mistrust in a marriage? Doesn't that breed questionable behaviors in a marriage? It does. All that points to a marriage full of mistrust. So what am I saying? We need to model. If we're putting a comparison, let's put actual good models of marriages, comparing it to the original plan of God, and also including the times and seasons we are in. Because we cannot just generalize all these things. And of course, once you get married, you need to know that you have to constantly learn. You have to constantly be somebody who accepts their faults. You have to constantly be somebody who's always apologetic. The Marriage Institute is an institute where you are supposed to have a compromise motto. So yes, it was all about marriage today. If you are married, start asking yourself, what model of a marriage are you building or are you working towards? Is it according to God's plan? Or is it according to what you know your fathers and your grandmothers did? Because some of those principles, if you try to apply them today, they might not work. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.